All right, welcome back, Keegan Cogan in A10. We're talking about what you love to talk about. You love to talk about government. Well, politics, but politics is government's sister.
Yeah.
When we're looking at government, we're going to look at it today as we're talking about the Iroquois people. But government's kind of, if you're looking at law, order, structure, leaders, there's lots of different forms of government. When we're looking at, the United States government doesn't have the same type of government as over in Europe. You have people that sometimes get elected, and then you have people that, kind of push out the next one, I guess you could say.
Some are appointed, some are born into their position, some seize power. The one thing about government in general, there's nothing new under the sun. Even our governmental system borrowed from ideas of past governmental systems, one of them being that of the Iroquois people. So this is not just a lesson in the Iroquois government, but also a lesson to tie into how when we first came over, the white European settlers, we looked at Native Americans as savages. Yet, as we're going to see today, they were in some ways
they're very ahead
more advanced, maybe not technologically, but as far as socially goes, much more advanced than the white European settlers.
And it's interesting how you bring up savage too, because then the other word that really gets closely tied to Native Americans is that they're primitive. They're very, very primitive. And yet, when you're looking at organizational structures in government, you're like, wow. And that's what you'll be saying after this, especially when
and even the fact that we call them the Iroquois.
Right.
That wasn't their name.
No.
They referred to themselves as the Haudenosaunee, people of the Longhouse. It was their enemies, the Algonquin, who called them Iroquois, which meant serpents.
Right.
So like just perspective, how history is going to distort these great people.
And here's another thing too, since you're bringing up the Europeans and we're looking at them as primitive as well. The Eastern Woodland people, the Haudenosaunee, or the Iroquois, however you want to call them. The world for them was created on the back of a turtle.
Yeah.
That's when you're looking at creation.
Sky woman.
Right.
Yeah.
So then when you're looking at Europeans who were very Christian or Catholic and their religious text was the Bible, you didn't have any of that in there. So right away you see the clashing of ideas. But when we're getting to government, there were 5 tribes originally. Right? And they were the
Let's see if we can remember them.
Mohawk,
Seneca,
Onondaga.
Cayuga, Onondaga, and Oneida.
Yep.
And these 5 tribes located in upstate New York, the symbol of their 5 tribes, the Great Tree of Peace, with the 4 squares representing the other 4 tribes. I think the next slide actually shows us this map. Yeah, the Seneca, Cayuga, Onondaga. The Onondaga were the Great Tree of Peace because they were located more in the middle of these lands, the Oneida and the Mohawk. By the 1720s, a 6th tribe, the Tuscarora, kind of move into the region and are welcomed into the region by the Iroquois. They had kind of been displaced by the Delaware. They were down in the Pennsylvania, Susquehanna, Delaware area, and those Native Americans had kind of been like, we don't like you, get out of here.
Yeah.
And they kind of wind up moving in and become part of the 6 nations of the Iroquois. But originally the 5, and the 5 is still the flag of the Iroquois people. Also the inventors of lacrosse.
Yeah, again, we were also looking at, you could see them having, I guess you could say differences, being that they're almost like different neighborhoods, different small regions within a region itself. So, the whole point of that League of Iroquois as well, for them coming together to maintain peace within these tribes as well.
Yeah, because early on, the Seneca and Cayuga constantly fighting.
Yep.
This is our land. No, it's ours. Well, you killed a deer on our land.
Right.
Well, the deer belongs to Earth, so it's our deer as well.
Right.
And then the Mohawk, who had the most land, the Oneida are like, hey, we want some of that too. This river, the Hudson, is really important. Whatever it might have been, these tribes were constantly bickering. Not necessarily going to war, because their true enemies were to the north, the Huron and the Algonquin. They're true enemies, but there's this division, if you would. And then in comes Hiawatha, the great peacemaker, who comes in, a holy man, a prophet, if you would, and he sits down with these tribes, and he's associated with this great quote, that a single arrow is easily broken, but a bundle of arrows will never break. And then if you almost put it into perspective, and I do this in my class, I tell a student, break 1 pencil. Easy.
Yeah.
And then I say, okay, here's 5 pencils. I'll try and break it. And then always the big football kid in the back, y'all do it. It's like, and they can't do it.
Right.
The whole idea in that there's strength in numbers. And as legend states, Hiawatha sits down with the 5 sachems, the 5 chiefs of these tribes, and this quote unites them, that they realize that they're stronger together than if they were to remain bickering amongst themselves.
These savages or primitive
Right,
people,
right.
who where on our currency we have the eagle holding the bundle of arrows, symbolizing our military
Yeah.
might. So
And then even Benjamin Franklin in America's first political cartoon, Join or Die.
Yep.
It's the same exact message.
Same
message, just
Exactly.
different wording.
Yep.
That there's strength in numbers. Stop your fighting. Let's form a new system of government to keep the peace among ourselves. And there's other reasons as
and
well.
What's the date they give for the League of Iroquois? Like the 1500s, 1519, I want to say.
1600 somewhere.
And when you're getting to that, again, we're quoting somebody else when the Native Americans, particularly the Iroquois, referred to as savages or primitive. This whole idea of coming together to try and maintain peace. If you know anything about the United Nations, or you could just pull from thin air, the United Nations, well, this must mean people coming together to talk about peace.
Yeah.
They had that idea first in the 1600s, and then of course you had the League of Nations after World War I, which you'll eventually get to.
Even our country,
Yeah.
I'm a New Yorker, but I'm an American. We'll go back for a second.
Yeah.
Well, I'm a Mohawk,
Yeah.
but I'm an Iroquois, and the Iroquois looked at their confederacy as one giant longhouse.
Right.
That the Seneca were the keepers of the western door, the Mohawk were the keepers of the eastern door, the Onondaga were the keepers of the central fire, which is why they were kind of like the capital of the Iroquois Confederacy, really just because they were located in the middle. So
I think we want to just go over some
Yeah.
notes just to make sure that the League of
you'll
Iroquois-
see this, yeah.
Yeah.
Because different books, different textbooks refer to it as different things. Iroquois Confederacy, League of Iroquois, same exact thing.
Now, when it came to this representative democracy, the fact that they did vote, what is kind of unusual here is that, the people who had voting power
We're women.
were women.
Women.
And we weren't there yet.
Men were the sachems.
Yes.
They always elected a man to be their leader.
Right.
But only women had the right to vote. In fact, in Iroquois society, when you got married, you took on your wife's name, which was their clan's.
Right.
You moved into your wife's longhouse and you became part of her family, where more in the white European culture, it was the complete opposite. And women, we certainly know, were subservient to men, that whole idea of cook, clean, and care.
Yep.
So
I love these 3 P's that you
yeah,
have for them.
peace, protection, and power. By forming together into one central unit, you're ending wars amongst themselves. They still had problems,
Yep.
but this confederacy was a way that the Mohawk, the Cayuga, the Onondaga, they could sit down together and be like, hey, look, you're hunting on our lands. All right, we're sorry. We'll repay you by giving you wampum, whatever it might be. It was a peaceful solution to problems, much like you just mentioned the United Nations.
Yep.
Protection. Well, there's strength in numbers.
Yep.
There's strength in numbers. So now, if the Mohawk are attacked, you're attacking the other 5 tribes. And that whole idea of all for one and one for all, and of course power. Now they are stronger together than they were separately against their enemies, Huron or Algonquin.
So you grew up with a brother, I grew up with a brother. It's just like, hey, I bickered with my brother all the time.
Mm-hmm.
But if somebody from outside of our house
You don't do that.
messed with him, I will mess you up.
Yep.
That's how it was. I can mess with him or bicker with him, but you can't. So,
Peace, protection, power.
love it. We're good, right? Thank you for watching.